Today we are diving back into the world of fiber lasers. I've covered a few different ones on this channel, but now we are taking a look at the ComMarker B6. We're going to talk about some of its good features, some of its great features, and one or two minor things that they could improve. Now, it doesn't matter if you want to do deep metal engravings, serial number printings, maybe even color marking on stainless steel. This may be the laser for you. So let's start right here with ComMarker. Now, these have been in the market for quite a while. They have a few different galvo style lasers available. So what makes the B6 so unique? Well, the first obvious thing is the size of it. For a fiber laser that has a decent power rating, this is actually a pretty small unit. Now, you can actually make this even smaller. This top plate and the arm and the head can all be separated from the base, so you could just have this sitting on top of your work surface and maybe the unit underneath. The overall size is 245 by 430 by about 550 high, so it is a really small unit, as I say, for a fiber laser that packs a decent punch. Now, there are 5 different versions of the B6 unit available, starting at the lowest end with the 20 watt unit. There's around $1,800 up into the top end of the price range. This is around $4,500 for the 60 watt Mopa version. Now, if you're unsure between the differences of Mopa and non-Mopa, in its simplest terms, it gives you access to an additional setting called the Q pulse, and this ultimately is how people can fine-tune this to do colours on things like stainless steel and titanium. Now, I won't bog the video down with all the details about things like the Q pulse, but if you want to learn more, there is an article on my website which I will link up in the corner of the video. Now, regardless of whether you want a Mopa laser or not, the main selling point about the B6 are the same across all 5 models. And one of its biggest selling points is this has autofocus inbuilt to it. The touch of one button, this will adjust the height of the laser to match your material perfect for the correct focal length, just guaranteeing you're going to get much better engravings or cuttings on your material when you start lasering. No more using things like old style measuring sticks. This just does it at the touch of one button. And if you want to manually override the height, you can adjust this in 3 different ways. There are 2 touch buttons on the front to go up and down. The touch panel on the top also has adjustable buttons, or you can do it manually from the knob at the top of the stem right here. And if there are any doubts about the accuracy of the autofocus within this, I did my own manual test and I found that the measurement was within 0.5 millimeter of what I actually set it to. So that is accurate, and actually I was probably 0.5 millimeter out compared to how that actually should be. Now, the way the autofocusing works is there is a sensor just in front of the lens, and this allows it to judge the distance between the material and higher or lower the head accordingly. Now, one thing I will point out is because this sensor is not directly aligned with the lens itself, if you are doing smaller objects like coins, you'll need to move them slightly forward to take the measurement and set the autofocus, and then put them back into the center in order to do the lasering. Now, 99% of the time, this is not going to be a problem, but when working with something like a rotary where it needs to align to the center of the lens, this can be a little bit tricky. If this is a machine that you're already looking at, then do remember my sale code on screen will get you 5% off the price of this machine, and there are also some links in the description area that will always take you to the best available price for the ComMarker B6. Next is the accuracy and speed of the B6 machine. This has an accuracy measurement of 0.01 millimeters. What does that mean in reality? Well, things like photo engravings are going to have super fine detail within them. If you want to engrave things such as text, you're going to be able to do this at sizes smaller than what your average eye can read. So super fine quality, super high detail you're going to get from the B6 machine. And in terms of the top speed of this machine, it is rated at 15,000 millimeters per second. Phenomenally quick speeds. In certain scenarios, that probably means by the time you click start on your job and go to look back at the laser, the job will already be finished. And in comparison to something like the B4 model, that only goes up to 10,000 millimeters per second. So this is 50% faster than the B4 version. Now, one thing I will highlight about the top speed, which I've seen on other ComMarker models, is that the settings they provide you on the USB stick cap this to a lower setting. So for example, when I loaded the settings for this machine onto my computer, it was capping the top speed at 7,000 millimeters per second, less than half. Now this is very easy to override. It is done very simply, but ultimately it's something to keep an eye on, that if you don't feel you're hitting the top speed with your laser, this may be the reason why. Time for a little bit of a PSA. One thing I constantly find myself reminding people of in forums is that yes, these lasers work out of the box, yes, they are fairly simple to use, and yes, sample settings are provided. But in order to get the most out of your laser, you need to spend the time calibrating it and doing the various material tests. Now, one of the first things I did once I got this set up was a lens calibration test, just to dial it in better and get rid of any warping going on. And there are various other tests as well that you can do to really dial your laser in. Now, you don't need to do these all at the start. Get used to your machine and then do those tests and setup procedures later on. But even when it comes to actually doing your materials, in order to get the best quality out of your machine, you need to do the material tests and dial them in. This tumbler right here had something like 40 tests done on it before I got to a phase that I was happy with for doing the final one. So spend the time getting used to your machine, but don't overlook the calibrations and the setting tests that you can do to really dial it in, because it will make things that you're trying to sell stand out from the crowd, because the quality is just going to be so much better. Now, in terms of the work area of this machine, this is typically defined by the lens that is fitted. And in this scenario, the standard lens is 150 millimeters, which means your work area is going to be 150 millimeters squared. Now, the lenses can be changed out on this. You can go to a smaller lens or you can go to a larger lens. Now, when you're using a smaller lens, basically the laser power is more intensified into that spot that it is burning on. So for example, if you're always doing smaller objects, maybe things like coins, then you may want to go to a smaller lens in order to get more effective power from the laser itself. Equally, if you want to go bigger, you can do to a larger lens. Now, they do advertise this will take up to a 300 millimeter lens, which in theory would give you a 300 millimeter square work area. However, as you can see, the bed is sort of limited to about 180 millimeters. So actually, to fit a 300 millimeter lens on this, you'd have a lot of overhang on the work area that you couldn't really use. So what I would say is 150 millimeters is ideal for this particular machine, but maybe if you want to go smaller, say to do smaller objects, then that is definitely an option. I wouldn't really consider going larger than this standard lens in this particular scenario. Or what I should say is certainly not up to a 300 millimeter lens. I think that is too big for this machine, but maybe something around a 200 millimeter lens will give you a bit more work area than the standard one that is installed. So what can this actually engrave and who is it really targeted for? Now, its biggest selling point in terms of what it can engrave is typically metal. It can do a wide variety, and pretty much any metal it will be able to engrave on. Now, obviously you can do things such as light surface in engraving. You can even do things such as cutting through metal or deep coin engraving as well. You really do get a wide variety of options when using one of these lasers. It can do additional material. It can engrave on things such as leather. It can engrave on things such as acrylic and a whole bunch of other materials. ComMarker do list something like 150 different materials that this laser can interact with. One thing I will highlight, this is not suitable for lasering on things such as clear materials or glass. For that you would need something like a UV laser, which I've previously reviewed. Link will be in the corner. Now, in terms of who this is targeted for, imagine a scale of hobbyist up to business case use. I would probably say this sits more in the hobbyist half of the area, maybe just bordering it into small business use, whereas something like the ComMarker B4 unit probably sits a bit further up the scale, where you're bordering hobby use and business use a little bit more. And for those wanting a little bit more information specifically on the laser used, well, I will put the data sheet that is provided with the laser up on screen just so that you can see it. Let's talk about software, because at the end of the day, you can't run one of these lasers without having the correct software. Now, when we are talking about galvo fiber style lasers such as this, there are two pieces of software typically referenced. One is called EasyCAD. This is a free piece of software, and it actually comes with the laser itself on the little USB stick. They give you all the settings to get you up and running in this piece of software. Now, the other piece of software is Lightburn, and this is paid for. Specifically, Lightburn Pro is the version that you're after, and this is just over $200. Now, that may seem a big difference from $300 to $200, but the thing is, Lightburn a lot easier to use in terms of pretty much everything to do with the laser. On top of that, ComMarker actually provides you a Lightburn material library to get you started. So a lot of base settings to avoid you doing too much testing on all your different types of materials. One thing that catches a lot of people out, when people usually start with these machines, they'll install EasyCAD first, start using it, and then switch over to Lightburn a little bit later on. But they often find they have problems in that Lightburn won't detect their laser. Now, the reason for this is because the EasyCAD driver is overriding it. So what you need to do at that point, if you're having this issue, is uninstall the EasyCAD driver, and then Lightburn should be able to do its thing and connect to the laser. I will put a link up in the corner to the laser everything video that walks you through how to do this. Now, as I said at the start of the video, I'm not just highlighting the good and great things about this machine, I'm also going to point out some of the things I think could be improved. One of the biggest things for me is this right here. You may not be able to see that on camera, but there is a slight amount of wobble in the head of the unit. Now, when you compare this to other machines such as the B6 unit or the Omni 1, those are solid, they don't move, whereas this just has a little bit more play. It may be because it's a lighter weight design in terms of the tower over here, and that's just giving that little bit of wobble, but that is something I would like to see stiffened up. Also, the other thing is the autofocus only really works with the standard lens, which I do find a little bit disappointing. It would be great if that had a wider range so you could use it with the larger or the smaller lenses and ultimately get a bit more versatility out of the autofocus feature. Now, in terms of what do you get in the box, obviously all the parts to build the laser itself, and as already mentioned, this top base plate can separate from the base unit, so you can run this separately, just connected by the cable at the back. There is also a riser unit to lift the entire thing up that sits at the base here, but when you are doing taller or deeper objects or running something like a rotary device. On top of that, there are a few additional accessories that come within the kit. For example, you get a foot pedal. This is brilliant for doing repeat work, for doing things like business cards where you're just swapping one in and out after another. Hit the foot pedal and it'll just run the same job. It just speeds things up so much. Now, in terms of additional accessories as well, there are things such as the goggles in the pack. One thing I will say is I prefer to purchase higher rated goggles than what usually are provided with the machines. I will put a link to some goggles in the description area. You'll also receive some sample materials to do some testing with, as well as the rotary driver. One additional accessory you can purchase for this that I've already touched on is the rotary device. This can be useful for doing things such as jewelry, rings, bracelets, but also the bigger one can do things such as tumblers. So that is my overview and review of the ComMarker B6 laser. If you are a hobbyist starting to venture into a small business, this could be an ideal setup for you, especially if you're focusing on things such as metal engravings, coins, jewelry, even simpler things such as business cards or maybe something like tumblers. This should definitely be on your list. If you are thinking of purchasing one, there will be some links in the description area below, and the code on screen will get you 5% off the cost. So definitely check it out and definitely use that code. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you do have any questions about this machine, comment down below. I will do my best to answer them. Thank you all very much for watching, and final thanks as always goes to my patrons. I will see you all on the next episode.